Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, party people, it's Thursday night, Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. This is episode 128 of Gridiron Grinder, and we are coming up on Super Wild Card Weekend. F yeah. And so, as the name would imply, we're going to be talking about Super Wild Card Weekend. But first, we're going to kick things off with Name That Stadium like we always do. Then we'll hit our recap of the past week. Then we are going to go all the way back to the beginning of the year and do our preseason predictions recap. After that, we'll talk about what the playoff bet is going to be between James and I. And then we'll provide our game picks for this wild card round this weekend. And so, and question of the week at the end. So quite a bit here tonight, but with only the 6 games on the slate, it goes a lot faster. And so we're still going to bookmark things like we always do in the description of the video. That way you can bounce around whatever you want to do. But if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We hope you like the video. And here we go. So, James, why don't you take it off with Name That Stadium, man?
All right. So this first, before I start naming that stadium, I'm gonna put it right here, and then I'll go into the explanation. So LA Dodger 423. Actually, somebody guessed and got it right. Last week I was at Lambeau Field.
Sweet.
So good job. It's kind of an obvious one based on how the games could have lined up, and it was really the only game that had the possibility to be a complete win and you're in, or losing you go home. Didn't pan out that way, unfortunately, but so good job guessing. Might need to work on your spelling a little bit, but hey, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, he could have picked the wrong stadium, and we would have given him the shout out.
Yeah,
Him or her. I don't know if it's a male or a female, but you know what I mean.
yeah, exactly. So, and with Name That Stadium, I'm traveling around during the season. It's generally a stadium that's hosting a game that weekend. And if you're like LA Dodger 423 and you guess you get it right, we'll give you that extra special shout out. And
I'll
so,
even bookmark it in the description so it's easy to get to.
so, so I'm just glad we got a taker finally. It's been a while since someone's guessed, but hey, good for you.
Yeah, we do it every week, and we're patient. So, whenever you guys are ready, no pressure, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah, and I mean, James, you have got wonderful seats there tonight. I hope that those are the seats you got for the game this weekend because nice little 50-yard line action, man.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay, well, hey, now that we got through Name That Stadium and we gave our super special shout out, let's go and do our recap of the past week here, James. And so, week 18 is in the books. The regular season's done. It's a bummer, but the playoffs are here, which is super cool. Looking at the final week of the season, were there any surprises from those matchups, in your opinion?
So there was a surprise, but it wasn't the final score of the game surprise. It was how the game was coached.
Okay.
Um, there was two actually. I forgot about one, but and both of them were kind of how the game was coached. So the Chargers at the Broncos.
Hmm.
I don't know what the fuck Brandon Staley was doing, um, playing all the starters. And Mike Williams hurt his back in the game,
Yeah.
but basically, with Baltimore losing earlier in the day, nothing could have happened to the Chargers' seat. They weren't going to go up because they didn't have a shot at the division. They weren't going to go down because they had the tiebreaker over Baltimore, and Baltimore lost. So they didn't need the game to win the game to get the fifth seed instead of the sixth seed. So I don't know why Staley was playing his starters, and this is the second year in a row in Week 18, Staley completely fucked up. Because
Yeah.
last year, if you remember, the Raiders Chargers
Yep.
game,
Yep.
it went into overtime,
That
and
complicit tie situation.
yeah, and it looked like the Raiders were playing for the tie,
Yeah.
and then Staley calls timeout, and the Raiders say, you know what, fuck you, we're gonna win and kick your ass out of the playoffs, and that's what happened. So I mean, it's 2 weeks in a row. Staley completely fucked up in Week 18, and possibly last year cost his team that valuable playoff experience.
Yeah.
And this year, I mean, possibly cost his team Mike Williams for the Chargers game.
Oh yeah, and Mike Williams looked rough going to the locker room. He was
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of pain. And then the other one, James, Joey Bosa tweaked the groin in that game too.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I'm hearing, he's going to play, but that groin has been a problem for him for most of the season, which, just another why would you have him on the field thing. It just was head scratching.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck Staley was thinking, but I mean, who knows? I don't understand it.
Yeah,
And
and
the,
so I guess what about the Washington beatdown over Dallas, man? That was a bit of a surprise for me. What'd you think of that?
I would say it was a surprise without the fact that I've been saying for weeks that they have a Dak Prescott problem.
Yeah,
Um,
leading the league in turnovers, man, or in
yeah,
interceptions.
leading the league in interceptions first and foremost. He also, I mean, that team is different with Dak playing quarterback than they were earlier in the year when they had
Cooper Rush,
Cooper Rush.
Central
Thank you.
Michigan, fire up
Pl-
chips.
Playing also like, and that's the thing is Dak missed what 5 games,
I
and
know, and
he
he
still led the
interceptions, man.
league
Yeah,
in interceptions, which is ridiculous. I mean, his TD interception ratio was 23 to 15.
yeah, bad year for him, man.
Yeah, terrible year for him. He had two fumbles, one fumble loss. It's just it's not not good.
No,
Um, and then on top of that, you have what's his face, Micah Parsons, who basically disappeared the second half of the season. The last like 5 games, completely disappeared. Hasn't been playing like we know he should.
yeah.
And what's there? Who's to believe that that's going to happen now?
Yeah, it is strange how that defense started the year just like so dominant
Mm-hmm.
and they've gone really quiet. And so um, who knows what that's going to mean, but they're playing Tampa Bay this weekend and yeah, I mean, they lost to Tampa Bay earlier in the year, week 1 if I believe if I'm correct, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so other than that, were there any other surprises for you, James?
So the surprise for me, other surprise, and it has to do with coaching, and it's the ultimate fuck you. Lovey Smith going for two. First of all, the Texans on fourth and like 25, throwing the Hail Mary to score the touchdown, and then going for two to win the game, which gave Houston, which gifted Chicago the number 1 pick.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's the ultimate fuck you because Lovie Smith had to have known he was going to get his ass fired after the season. I mean, I don't know if they should have hired him. That's debatable. But it's like okay, you know what? Fuck you. You get the number 2 pick.
Yeah, and I was wondering, going into that game, was he in a win or you're fired situation, and maybe that's what led to it. But then he got fired anyhow, and it
Mm-hmm.
just was like, wow, yeah, that was like you don't want that because I think what they're saying is that Davis Mills isn't going to be the guy, which nobody really expected him to be, and he's just been way better than his draft position. But him being a franchise quarterback, maybe not the case. Probably a really good backup, but that number one pick would have gone a long way towards them getting that franchise quarterback. Now they got to worry about what's Chicago going to do, because Chicago will probably trade with the team that needs a quarterback. And then that leaves them looking for the next quarterback, or they got to trade up a spot. And so, yeah, they just
Hmm.
screwed the pooch there, man.
Yeah, and the thing with Chicago is I love what's his face, Ryan Poles, the GM for Chicago,
Yeah,
said this week with he basically said, Justin Fields is our starter unless somebody blows us away. Like
yep.
we could draft a quarterback, wink wink, give us
Oh, yeah,
offers, wink wink,
yeah,
and it's like which is great because they're they're going to take offers. They're probably not going to want to drop much below five. So you look at the teams that have the um, next four picks after them. You have Houston, which if it's Houston, that's just hilarious to me. If wins, beats
yeah,
Indy,
yeah.
and gets the number one pick. But the other hilarious part is a team that could trade up to get them, and they're in the prime spot is Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah.
So not only did they beat Indianapolis, giving Indianapolis the fourth pick, but then Indianapolis turns around and trades up ahead of Houston to get the quarterback. It's funny
Yeah.
because
And,
like
and- yeah,
after that you have Lions who are not
hopefully
gonna
not. Yeah.
trade up. Hopefully not. Is it the Lions or is it Denver? It's one. I forget who has.
I want to say Denver, and then I think we're at
Yeah,
six.
the Lions are six. Lions are at six from the Rams. I mean, you also have the Raiders up there who need a quarterback. You have
Yeah.
New Orleans in the range. Maybe you have Carolina who needs a quarterback. The Jets who need a quarterback. It's
Yeah, and I'm hearing Indy, rumor mill stuff is that they've tried the veteran now 3 times. Philip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan. They want to draft a guy. And
mhm.
so, yeah, they're definitely one of those guys that could be trading up just to make sure they get the guy that they want. Yeah, which would be interesting with, the dynamic with Houston. But yeah, I don't know, man, just wild stuff. What'd you think about that Detroit game?
I loved it. A lot of it was coaching issues. I think like going for it on fourth and one, or 4th and 2, in your own territory early in the game. Not play calling was kind of suspect. I think they were in the red zone 5 times, and 3 of those times they scored. They were only able to get field. I forget how many. I think it was like one they didn't score. 3 of the times they got a field goal, and one of the times they scored a touchdown, which
Yeah.
is which is ridiculous. I mean, they held the Lions to 20 points, so you should be able to, with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, you should be able to win holding your opponent to 20 points, and they just weren't able to do it.
Yep. Yeah, and I loved what Dan Campbell told the team. It was you know, basically the prep for the week was either we're going to the playoffs or they're
Mm-hmm.
not, you know. And
Uh huh.
it was, we had no control over Seattle winning and beating us out. But we were able to prevent Green Bay from getting there, which division rival, that's huge, man. That's good stuff.
And that fucking Seattle game pissed me right the fuck off. There were some
Yeah,
terrible,
horrible, yeah,
terrible
horrible
fucking
calls.
calls.
Yeah.
Like I forget what it was. Not the missed field goal, but the field goal they kicked before that. There was like the
You
most
talking about the Jalen
absurd.
Ramsey on the sideline? Geno Smith ran
No, no,
into
no,
him.
no. That was the missed field goal. But there was the field goal they
Oh,
scored before that. I
the
forget what the penalty was.
okay. Yeah, and I know that
Uh
that Diggs had that taunting after the pick, and they didn't call it. It was like, geez, man, nothing's gonna go our way, and then Quandre Diggs of all people freaking seals it. It's like,
hmm.
uh, that's okay. I
Yeah.
was happy. I was happy when he left Detroit and he got to be the full-time guy in Seattle, because you could see the talent there in Detroit. But we were so dysfunctional that it wasn't going to work out for him. And so he's having a heck of a career now, man.
It was the running into the kicker penalty on fourth
Okay.
and 3 on the, on Seattle's 21-yard line. So they were punting the fucking ball, and like the guy kind of was pushed or tripped, and he kind of like fell a little bit backwards. 10 seconds after the punt was gone, and the the punter caught him, and they
Yeah.
called running into the kicker.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like what the fuck is that?
Yeah. That was weak sauce, dude. Weak sauce. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of
And then
bad
the
calls, man.
and then the Ramsey call, that was the most absurd thing to call. Like, what the fuck is Ramsey gonna do?
Yeah.
He's standing there. He didn't tackle him. He's just standing there, and fucking Geno Smith, was it Geno Smith? Yeah, Geno
Yeah.
Smith ran into him, and it got knocked down, and they called the unnecessary roughness on Ramsey. Like, what the fuck's he gonna do if he
Yeah.
doesn't kind of brace for the impact? He's liable to get hurt if Geno Smith runs into
Yep.
him, and Geno Smith has as much. Ramsey has as much right to be in that spot as Geno Smith does, and maybe why wasn't it on Geno Smith for running
Yeah.
into Ramsey, because
Yeah.
Ramsey was
Gino could have
standing
went
there.
around, man. He
Yeah,
definitely could have went around. So
yeah, and Ramsey didn't move and was just standing there, and Geno ran right into him. So
yep.
there's no fucking way that should have been a penalty. Luckily, they fucking missed the field goal, but
Mm-hmm. So all right. So back to some of the injury stuff. So yeah, Mike Williams not looking good. Bosa, from what I hear, gonna play, but obviously he's got lingering issues with that groin. Tua for the Dolphins was ruled out again
mhm.
with the concussion, which is just really unfortunate for him. And then Lamar for Baltimore, everything I'm hearing is that it's like a very, very, very small chance he plays.
He's ruled
More
out.
likely. What's that?
He's ruled out.
Oh, he got ruled out. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that knee thing
he
that's been going
posted
on for
on
what,
Twitter.
5 weeks or whatever?
Yeah, yeah, he posted on Twitter that he won't be playing.
Yeah. And his is kind of interesting because I don't know that I prescribe to some of this, but you get some of the haters out there saying, "Oh, well, why would he play? He's only
Mhm.
at risk to lose more money because he's got to sign his deal and yada yada yada." Yeah, I mean, maybe, but it's the playoffs. I mean, to me it seems like if you're a competitor and your team's in the playoffs, if you're capable of doing it, you're gonna do it. Uh, and since he's not, it makes me think that knee is a lot worse than they've been leading everybody to believe, because every week it just seems like they've been sandbagging it like, oh, he'll be back for the playoffs and no big
Mhm.
deal and blah blah blah. And now we're here and it's like, ooh, he's not going to play. Okay, that's a problem.
Yeah, and it's Tyler Huntley might not be playing.
Oh, I didn't hear about that. Oh,
Like,
that'd be a disaster, man.
yeah, so with Tyler Huntley, the good news is he did do some throwing in practice today, but today's the first day that he's thrown in practice. So I mean, it it might be Anthony Brown
Oh,
starting.
yeah. I mean, if Huntley's in there, maybe they have a chance because Huntley has shown some good tape. Obviously, he's inconsistent at best right now, but he's been developing and he's shown us a little bit of flashes here and there. But it's tough, dude. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for the Ravens here, man.
Hmm. So yeah, so Lamar practice are posted today. There's still inflammation surrounding and my knee remains unstable. I wish I could be out there with my guys more than anything, but I can't give 100%. I can't give 100% of myself to my guys and fans. I'm still hopeful we have a chance.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then um, Huntley was limited in practice today.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I guess going on to some of the other news of the week. And so, as is normal, when the regular season ends. You get a little flurry of coaching changes, and there was more than that, GMs, assistant coaches, all that kind of stuff. I'm only going to touch on the head coaches, James. If you want to layer on top, that's cool. But here's the guys that have gotten the axe so far. Cliff Kingsbury, he is out in Arizona, which is just brutal considering they just extended him like 10 months ago or whatever the heck it was.
I would say I
Uh,
don't even know why they hired him in the first place. He was a losing college coach. He was set like he was fired from A&M, Texas A&M, and nobody, no other college wanted to hire him as his head coach, and he was set to be the offensive coordinator for
USC.
USC, and
Yeah.
then fucking Arizona's like, hey, want to be our coach? I was like,
Yeah, it was a Kyler Murray thing, and oh, Kingsbury's this offensive guru, and we want him to help our, young quarterback, and yeah, I mean, here we are a couple years later, and it's over now. Um, and I mean, I'm pretty sure I read that he was supposed to be under contract through 2026, which
mm-hmm.
means he's going to be getting paid a lot of money by that team to basically just enjoy life for a while. And knowing him like a lot of these guys do, he might go back and do some TV stuff or take a job in the college ranks or even sit out a year and see if something else happens in the NFL. But I mean, he's kind of in the catbird seat for a guy that was just fired because now he's got all this money coming his way, and it's like he can do no wrong for the next 4 years, basically. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, these contracts, man, they're a little bit wild. All right, so then the next one we know Matt Rule was out in Carolina. Steve Wilkes, they're kind of saying is, he is out, but they are giving him a chance to interview for the open position. Similar in Indianapolis, Frank Reich, obviously we know he's been out for a little while. Jeff Saturday, they like cut him loose, so to speak, from being the interim head coach, but they are giving him an opportunity to get the full-time position. I think with him only getting the one win, probably unlikely he gets the
Mm-hmm.
job, but I know he's buddy with Ursay, so you never know. Wilkes, interesting, like you know me, I'm an advocate for him getting that job, and if he doesn't get that job, I hope he gets one somewhere else because I think he showed the kind of leadership that you want from a guy. He turned around a failing squad, and he had him in playoff contention almost all the way to the end, which pretty good for whatever it was, like a 1-4 start with Matt Rule. The next one, James, is Nathaniel Hackett. We know that he is out in Denver. He's been out for a little while now. The one that's kind of interesting connected to that is the Zoom interview with Jim Harbaugh this past week. I believe it occurred on Monday. A year after Harbaugh said he wasn't going to go back to the NFL, here we are. He
But
gets bounced out of the playoff,
right, but
and
there's other reasons behind it. So Michigan received the allegation charges against them for during the COVID year.
okay.
Harbaugh violated the no contact period with recruiting and basically told the NCAA to go fuck themselves. And Michigan has said that they're not going to do anything with Harbaugh's contract until after the investigation into the allegations. So they're not going to commit to him until after the investigation, which is
Uh,
giving him the fuel to go somewhere else to get a little bit more security. So there's a little bit more behind it than just Harbaugh said it last year.
Yeah, and no, I'm glad you brought that up because, another thing to mention with Harbaugh is it was just like what, 2 years ago or whatever, they cut his pay, which they
Mm-hmm.
restored. And so it's just been a contentious relationship for him at U of M. Um, and, I think the way that it ended this year with the loss to TCU, and then TCU just getting blown the frick out by Georgia, it looks real bad on U of M, and that's
Mm-hmm.
on Harbaugh. And so, But we'll see what happens. I've also heard he's in the mix for the Indianapolis job and that he has some desire to play there, I mean, to coach there because he played there years ago as a quarterback. We'll see how that shakes out. But then the other one, James, the last one I had on the list was Lovie Smith got the axe from Houston. And, I guess if you can't do better than David Culley, you probably got to go. I mean, the year before, David Culley got 4 wins out of that team, and everybody thought it was a disaster. But I think you and I were kind of on the same page that Culley didn't really have a chance, man. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they stripped down that roster. He was going with a rookie Davis Mills at the time. There was no Nuke, there was no J.J. Watt, there was, everybody was gone, man. And, David Culley pulling 4 wins out was really probably pretty good. And they didn't give him a chance to bring in his own guys or build his team, but they didn't set him up for success. And so, yeah, Lovie Smith going the wrong way. I don't know. It's tough. He's very well respected in the NFL, but I think he could have done more, should have done more. And, it doesn't
So
bother me that he's gone.
no, I don't even think he should have been hired in the first place. Like in his coaching career, including when he was at Illinois for those years, he's sub 500.
Yeah.
So overall sub 500, he probably shouldn't have been hired in the first place. So I'm not surprised that he's gone. I do like the fact that he gave the ultimate middle finger to
Yeah.
Houston, but
Houston's front office, there have been, rumblings for years about their dysfunction. And so,
mhm.
yeah, him flipping him the bird on the way out the way he did, they probably had that coming, man.
Yeah, so it's just funny that I love the fact that he went for two and to win the game. I mean, maybe he was hoping they didn't make it and they
Yeah.
lost, and maybe he was fired because he didn't lose the game.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's thinking I gotta win this to keep my job. And they're like, no, we're firing you for winning it. And so, yeah,
Uh-huh.
just that's an interesting dynamic. But so, in other coaching news, with these openings, it looks like the Cardinals, the Texans, and the Broncos, from what I've heard, have requested permission and I believe received permission to interview Sean Payton. And so that's positive. Obviously, anybody that offers him a contract, they got to trade with the Saints to get his rights,
So
or take over his contract, but,
the thing
compensate
with
New Orleans.
that is as a precursor to requesting permission, it's basically understood that because New Orleans and Sean Payton didn't leave on bad terms. So New Orleans isn't going to waste Sean Payton's time. So
Yeah.
basically, New Orleans is asking, probably as more than likely asking up front what they're willing to give them for Sean Payton, and they're approving that as a possibility before they give the permission to interview Payton. And the league said, well, since he's under contract, you can't negotiate with him or you can't interview him until January 17th.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, and I tell you, I've kind of suspected with this one, it just seems to me because the rumors were all over this last year. It's going to be Dallas and McCarthy's going to be out. But I don't know. I mean, Jerry Jones just said that, McCarthy's not on the hot seat and, but there was so many rumors last year.
That's not what Jerry Jones said.
Okay, well then, enlighten me here,
What
man.
what Jerry Jones said was he was asked if he would reevaluate McCarthy if they lost, and he said no. I have much information to evaluate McCarthy on.
Okay,
He didn't say he's not on the hot seat. He said it doesn't hinge on winning in Tampa Bay.
gotcha. So yeah, his mind's made up no matter what happens, whether
Yes,
that means they're keeping him or they're getting rid of him.
exactly.
Yeah, which, I mean, that can be mixed. It can be mixed up because, there is that crazy outside chance they go all the way.
Hmm.
And, it's like he said just enough to protect himself either way, which is like,
Hmm.
yeah, I get it, whatever. And so, yeah, then James, the last thing I got in coaching news is Sean McVay. He's at it again, contemplating retiring and, pulling his little hissy fit like he did last year. And
So,
it's, I don't want to like bash the guy because I get it. You're wanting to start a family or whatever he was talking about last year and this and that. But, it's just awfully convenient. The team is the worst team ever after winning a Super Bowl, and now he's playing the retirement game. Um, it's just embarrassing, and he's a really freaking good coach. It's like just I don't know, the way that I would approached it is know for sure. Yeah, you know what? It was a bad year and I'm going to take some time away to focus on my family. Or you go with the approach of, yeah, it was a bad year. We took it on the chin. Lots of reasons for it, but we're coming back with a fucking fire next year
hmm.
and we're going to go at it again. But like, don't play this fucking, well, I don't know, I need time to think about it and blah, blah, blah. It just, we saw it with the Rams, man, last year. He did it. Stafford did it. Aaron Donald did it. Stafford just did his thing a couple weeks ago with the neck about, I don't know, I might retire, this, that. And then from what I heard, decided he's coming back.
Hmm.
And so now we're just waiting on Aaron Donald to do the same thing. I mean, it's like, come on, guys, get your head in the game or get out and let somebody else fill that spot because this half in, half out shit, it's not good for your team, man.
No, it's not good for your team. And what I'm reading on McVay is people around him. Basically, more or less, the gist of it is they'd be surprised if he's coaching the Rams next year.
Okay.
People around him think he's stepping aside. He just
So,
has to come announce that decision, which is another weird one because the Rams just extended him this season.
yeah, and so here's a weird one that I think that this is like way rumor mill, like purely speculative, but I went to lunch with a guy today that said he heard something about the possibility of McVay uh, getting traded or somehow ending up with the Chargers. Brandon Staley out after this year. McVay doesn't even have to move. He gets a fresh start to get away from the disaster that happened with the Rams. Uh, you know, like I said, I've not heard anything to quantify it or to qualify it or whatever. It would be interesting. And it just, the coaching trades like that are kind of rare. So I don't know. But
See,
uh,
see, what I think is I think Peyton wants the Chargers.
I would, dude, I would love to see Sean Payton end up with the Chargers. I think
Uh-huh.
that would be
Because
amazing.
every account is basically Sean Payton loves living in LA. He absolutely loves it here and wants to stay here. So he ends up. I see more of a chance of him ending up with the Chargers
Yeah.
than McVay ending up with the Chargers.
Yeah, I think the McVay thing, that's kind of just somebody's wild ass idea. But Sean Payton, I think there could be some teeth to that because why wouldn't you want to coach Justin Herbert and have him for the long haul? Herbert is so young, you just locked in with like a decade plus with the team. I mean, that's like, and he can do it. He did it with Breeze. I think that would
Hmm.
be like a match made in heaven right there.
Yeah.
All right, so non-coaching news, but other news from this past week important to hit on. Damar Hamlin, everybody is pretty much staying very well on top of that. But I did see James, he was discharged from the
Hmm.
hospital, which is really good news. He's going to continue his rehab from home. There was a guy I heard just earlier said that there's a chance he plays next year, which, we'll all keep our fingers crossed. And if that happens, man, it's amazing and it's a miracle, and that's kind of what we're all hoping for because, young guy, bright future. It'd be great if he could get back on track at some point.
Yeah. I agreed.
And then next up, man, I got Roquan Smith with the Ravens. Sorry, James, he will not be coming to Detroit in free agency. He signed a 5-year extension worth 100 million. And it was weird. There was like two different guaranteed numbers there was like a 40 million number and a 60 million number,
Hmm.
and I didn't get to the full details about why there were two guaranteed numbers, but you know, I guess there was just some variable in the contract.
I didn't do guaranteed numbers for Roquan Smith.
Oh, you broke
Oh,
up a little bit there.
oh, sorry. I didn't see the different guaranteed numbers for Roquan Smith.
Yeah, it was strange. I don't know, and it just said like 40 million guaranteed, or 60 million over the life of the contract or something. And I thought, how could you have two guaranteed numbers? I don't know. Like I know that you can have like additional guaranteed, in future years of, well, hey, if, he gets past year 3 and he's on the roster by X date, then we guarantee X amount of the salary or whatever. But it was just strange the way it was in the headline.
Okay, so I see what it is. So it's basically it's 45 million fully guaranteed,
Okay.
60 million in total guarantees. So that 60 million or that additional 15 million um, is earned. Guarantee is earned.
Okay. Yeah, it's like as long as he's on the roster for long enough, that additional 15's guaranteed.
Uh, this is more. No, that's an old guarantee. Old contract.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, while you're looking at that, the last thing I had, which you already covered, was just talking about how the Bears landed the number 1 pick, thanks to Houston getting that win this past week. Um, I think you covered that pretty well, but just kind of putting the ball in your court in case there were any GM changes or assistant coach changes or other news from this past week that you wanted to hit on before we move to the next step here.
Um, the only other thing is Derek Carr.
Oh yeah, him saying goodbye to the Raiders.
Yeah, which I mean, it's so weird that they're going to be moving on from him because didn't just like a year ago, didn't they just extend him
Yeah, I
3 years, like 40 million a year?
yeah, most people are saying his contract is prohibitive for trading, but we've seen the fake cap ways of the NFL, and so if there's a will, there's a way. And then what's his face, the owner of the Jets, came out this week saying they'll pay big money or whatever to bring in a veteran quarterback, which was a lot of people saying, well, that's his way of saying we want Derek Carr. So,
Yeah.
who
So
knows? And then with Mike LaFleur being out with the Jets, it also kind of
I
says
forgot about that.
we're not going after Jimmy G. And so
Yeah.
maybe they're all in on Derek Carr. I don't know, man.
So the interesting thing about it is so he has 40 million guaranteed February 15th.
Okay.
The trade can't be official until March 15th. So the Raiders have to trust. Well, first of all, Carr has a no trade clause, so he has to approve the destination.
Yeah.
And the Raiders also would have to trust that the team that has, in principle, agreed to the trade doesn't back out of the trade.
Gotcha.
Because the team, like, fuck, if I want to fuck with them, well, yeah, I'll trade for them, sure, no problem. It can't become official. Oh, you know what? Never mind. I this other quarterback fell in my lap, and I want this one instead. So you're
Yeah.
stuck with the 40
Yeah.
million
Watch
guarantee.
Belichick do it to McDaniels.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, geez, it's a lot of trust that you have to have in a team that you're competing with.
Yeah. All right. Well, you good there, or are you still looking at Roquan Smith?
Yeah, I just glanced at it. I couldn't find it I couldn't find it real quick,
Yeah, that's
so I
all
would have to dig into that because I didn't see the two different numbers until you mentioned it.
right. Okay. Well, no
So,
biggie. Let's move on, man. So James, let's do our regular season picks recap real quick here. And so, you know, regular season's in the books, blah blah blah. We made our picks every week. We had a awful start to the season. Things got better after about the first month or so. You ended up finishing the year with 157 wins, which was good for 58%. I ended up finishing the year with 170 wins, which was good for 63%, which also, James, means I'm the big winner of $100 in whiskey. And so I'll keep you posted after the show. We'll talk. I've got my eye on a couple bottles here, and we'll figure out the logistics for all of that. But also, just kind of in comparison to last year, you had 158 wins on the season, which who knows, maybe if that Cincinnati Buffalo game was played, you might have matched that 158. And so you were like pretty much spot on with last year at 58%. I had 163 last year, which was 60. So I got better, but it wasn't quite the 67% that I had a couple years ago. And so both of us have some room for improvement. And we'll find a way to update our models for this next regular season. But for this year, it's not over yet. As you know, James, we've still got the playoffs, and we had a certain way of doing our bet last year for that, which was same stakes, $100 towards a bottle of whiskey. Why don't you tell me or tell whoever's watching how we're going to handle the playoff picks, man?
so for the playoff picks, we're doing a confidence level in the pick. So, like for instance, this weekend we have 6 games. So whatever game we're most confident in the pick, we assign 6 points to that, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then like next week it'll be 6, 5, 4, 3, and then 6 and 5. So as it goes on, the games are worth more, more and more value because it gets tighter and tighter.
Assuming you get it right, yeah.
Assuming you get it right. If you get it wrong, you get 0.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're really confident and you slap a 6 on a matchup and it goes the wrong way, you just lost 6 points. And so yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
goal is to see by the end of the Super Bowl who has the most points wins, which last year I don't even think I got past wild card weekend. You smoked me right out of the gate, man. So
No, last year you did get past. The first year it was like basically.
okay, maybe that's what it was. I pulled a file from one of the last years and updated it, and it only had the wild card picks. And so I was like, I must have just got lit up. And I kind of vaguely remember, just the picks not working out for me, which was interesting because, 3 years in a row now, I've won the regular season, which I go almost entirely off my model with a few overrides here and there. And then the last 2 years, you've won the playoffs, which a lot of that you've kind of gone on some of the qualifying factors and some of the narrative. And so it's interesting how it seemed like that led to your success with the playoffs, where the model led to the success for me with the regular season. And now I know this year you kind of switched to a little bit of a model. And so, who knows? At some point you might just be kicking my ass both ways. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. So glancing at it, you made it. Didn't make it to the conference championship. I beat you
Okay.
because you picked Tennessee. Um, I gave that was your 6.1. So basically, no, you had to made it. Why is this not adding?
And while you're doing that, I'm just making a note here.
Oh, because the formula's messed stuff. So I'll have to check. No, actually, looking at it, last year we made it. You made it pretty far because after the division round last year, because I only got two right in the divisional round, and like my highest confidence pick was we both lost our six, and I also lost my four.
Okay.
So yeah, so last year you made it, we made it at least to the championship round, if not further. Um, but I'm not seeing. I'm seeing a different. Huh? Why am I not? Yeah, I'm not seeing a different one. So it was 14. Here we go. Yeah, we did have. I found the other one. This is 2020. No, it looks like both year. Yeah, so basically both years you were the first year you were basically knocked out in the divisional round. I was
Okay.
up like 30-16. Or
Yeah.
sorry,
So,
38-16.
oh yeah, you just crushed me. So yeah, I must have pulled up probably just the file for the wild card weekend then,
Yeah,
which is fine.
that's what it looks like. I'm not seeing those. Oh well.
Well, hey, while you're looking back, man, why don't we move it over and let's talk about our preseason predictions recap. And so, right before the season started, we went through top to bottom, all 32 teams, made record predictions, and now here we are going into the playoffs. We know where everybody stands. Let's take a trip down memory lane, and let's see where we were close or where we were right and where we were frickin' wildly off because every year, a lot of things that you cannot predict, injuries, busts, people coming out of the woodwork, all sorts of crazy things. And so, James, I've got the file up on this end. Let me know if you have it on your end, or if you want, I can send it to you through.
I
You got
have
it?
I have mine up. I don't have yours. So
Sure. All right, yeah, I mean that's fine. So starting at the top, we got the AFC East. Is that the file you're looking at? No?
yeah,
Okay. All right, so Buffalo ended up being the top team there at 13-3. I had a prediction of 15-2. Looks like you were at 14-3, James. Is that consistent with your
yeah,
notes? Okay.
yep.
Miami, you nailed it, 9-8. I had them at 8-9, so we were both pretty close there. After that, New England at 8-9, which was what I had picked. You had them at 7-10, still pretty close. And then the Jets, we both were dogging them. I had them at 3
Mm-hmm.
and 14. You had them at 2 and 15. They finished 7-10. They were big time overperformers this year. Unfortunately, most of that happened in the first part of the season, and it broke down for them at the end when the playoffs really mattered the most.
Yeah, and the thing with the Jets is their last 31 possessions, they did not score a touchdown.
Yeah.
31 possessions without a touchdown.
Yeah, the quarterback thing is going to kill him. And, I know that, Brees Hall got hurt and that ended up changing things for him too. Hopefully he comes back healthy next year. And I hope they get a quarterback. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
Derek Carr's the guy, but, you know, all they really need is a halfway decent quarterback, and the rest of that roster is good, man.
Yeah, I completely I agree with you there. As long as Brees Hall comes back and Elijah Bear Tucker comes back
Yep.
healthy.
All right, so then on to the AFC North. We had, let's see, we had, a couple different opinions here. I had Baltimore at the top going 13-4. They ended up finishing 10-7. You had them at 12-5. Cincinnati ended up winning that division at 12-4, and you had them going 13-4, pretty close. I had them going 10-7. After that, Pittsburgh finished 9-8, which you had them at 10-7, which was pretty darn close. I had them at 4-13, and so remember, this was all based on the model, and we
Mm-hmm.
talked about it, that the model was like, oh, this Pittsburgh roster, ooh, not good. But Tomlin coached the frick out of them, and I'm glad they got above 500. And then at the bottom of the division, we had the Cleveland Browns. They finished 7-10. James, you called them at 9-8, which was pretty close. My model had them at 12-5. I had a lot of faith that Brissett was going to be able to carry them long enough for Watson to come in and have them run into the playoffs. And they just, on a weekly basis, underperformed from where I was at with them. But it looked like you were fairly close to what you were expecting there.
Yeah. So the thing with the North that kind of annoys me is I upgraded Pittsburgh by one game from like when we talked about the way too early
Mm,
like schedule release. I had them at 9-8 back in like back in like March or April, whenever the schedule was released, May, whenever we did that, whenever the schedule was released. I had them at 9-8, and then I upgraded them a game, and
okay.
that kind of annoys me because I was like right on back then, and
I got you. Yeah, and hey, maybe next time I'll get my notes from both of those different check marks because stuff changes, but sometimes it's like that. Sometimes maybe you overanalyze it,
mhm.
and your original gut instinct might have been better. All right, so then for the AFC South, this one we both kind of shit the bed on. We had a lot of faith in Indianapolis. I picked Indy going 14-3. I was really excited about Matt Ryan there. He busted. A lot of that was the offensive line being a problem. Jonathan Taylor underperformed. Shaq Leonard changed his name from Darius Leonard to Shaq Leonard and almost didn't even play this year. And so that team, just a disaster. You were picking them at 12-5. They finished 4-12-1. After that, you were looking at Tennessee as being the second team in that division. You had them at 11-6.
They were the second team in that division.
Well, all right, yeah. So you got that right. Yep. They finished 7-10. I was dogging them. I had them at 4-13, and it was similar to Pittsburgh. We were talking about the model. Did not like the talent
Hmm.
on paper. We did talk about how Vrabel historically has way out coached his talent on the team, uh, but he wasn't able to get to the 10-11 wins like he did the last couple years. And 7-10, rough. They missed the playoffs. After that, James, Jacksonville, they ended up finishing the year at 9-8. You had them at the bottom at 3-14, which I mean, hey, I wouldn't blame you. We thought it was a disaster going in. I had them just a little bit better at 5-12.
Hmm.
They overperformed. They were a team that, in my opinion, was very similar to the Lions this year. Just in different kinds of ways. There was a lot of boom and a lot of bust. Like if they were on, they could have played with the best of them, and if they were off, oh my gosh, they just sucked.
Yeah, and the thing with Jacksonville is like I thought they had the components. I thought they were a year away
Yeah.
from being above 500. I thought they would have progress this year and then explode next year. So they're a year earlier than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, great for Doug Peterson, man. He came in and he turned them around pretty fast.
Hmm.
And so then at the bottom of the barrel, we got the Houston Texans. They finished 3-13-1. I had them at my lowest record, which I was showing 1-16, and you had them at 4-13, which was pretty close to where they finished. Going on then to the AFC West, James. So Kansas City ended up being the top dog at 14-3. I had them as second in the division at 12-5. Looks like you had them at third in the division at 8-9. And I remember you were a little bit down on them. I don't know if it
I
was
had
because of
them
the
at
Tyreek
fourth,
thing or what.
fourth at eight
Oh
nine.
shit, that's right. You had them at fourth. Sorry,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
was I was I was down on them because it's not outside of Mahomes and Kelsey. It's not a talented roster, and I mean this is why Mahomes is going to win the MVP this year is because he carried that team to a 14-win season
Yeah,
somehow.
it was impressive. Yeah. Yeah, and so then after that, the Chargers, they took second in the division at 10-7. We were both high on the Chargers. You had them at 14-3. I had them at 13-4. I believe that if they could have just avoided one or two injuries, they would have been probably in
Hmm.
that range. But early in the year, especially, I mean, there was a point in the year where we didn't even think they were going to make the playoffs because
Hmm.
the injuries were that severe. And so,
Yeah.
pretty good for them to turn it around and make it in. Then there is the Raiders at 6-11. They were third in the division, which kind of worked out for me. I had them third in the division, but I had them at 9-8. They went 6-11. You
That's
had them at twelve
exactly
and
what.
five. You were big on them, but there was a lot of reason to be big on them,
Mhm.
and it just Josh McDaniels, man, did not click with that team. And the crazy part about it, James, in my opinion, is that uh, Josh Jacobs lit it up this year on the ground, despite them messing with the offensive line. And the offensive line, I thought, took a step back. But Josh Jacobs still had a career year. It was the Derek Carr component with McDaniels that didn't get it done. And
Mhm.
I thought for sure Derek Carr would have fit in his offense
Yeah.
perfectly with the way you look back at like vintage Brady. I thought, oh, that's Derek Carr's game all day, and it just didn't happen, man. Especially with Devontae Adams there, it's like, what? How did this not work? Oh, and I know Waller got hurt for a while and Renfro got hurt for a while, but they had plenty of weapons, man. And then on defense too, that was a really, really good defense last year, and it was sloppy at best this year. It just like the wheels fell off for these guys, man.
Hmm.
And so then at the bottom of the barrel, we got Denver. They ended up finishing 5-12. I had them at 8-9. You had them at 9-8. And I remember 8-9. That was what the model was predicting. I thought they were going to beat 8-9. I felt so good about them with Russell Wilson and how good that defense was, and then just all the weapons around him on offense. And then little did I know, Nathaniel Hackett is like the worst head coach we've seen in our generation. And that's
Yeah.
saying a lot because we saw Matt Patricia. So, you all right. Moving on to the NFC, James. We've got the NFC East to start, and Philly was the top dogs. They were at 14-3. I picked them going 12-5, which the model was high on them. A lot of that was the offensive line and the defensive line. You had them at 9-8, tied for the top of the division. Um, and
And I
I
had
know
them.
you had a
I had them winning.
tiebreaker thing.
I had them winning the tiebreaker over Dallas. So I had
Nice.
Philadelphia winning the division. I just didn't think the division was going to be as good as it was.
Yeah, nobody expected this. Yeah, I mean they were so bad, but they turned it around pretty quick. And
Hmm.
yeah, and then Dallas at 12-5. I thought they'd be the top dog at 14-3. Dak totally shit the bed. You had them at 9-8. Uh, but right up there at the top based on the standings at least. After that, we've got the Giants, which they went 9-7-1, and you and I both thought it was going to be a train wreck. We had them at 3-14.
Hmm.
That was, so it's like sometimes you get upset when you're wrong, and sometimes you get excited about being wrong. This was one of the ones where I felt good about it because uh, turned out I'm a huge fan of Dable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like, when you see a guy come in and do what he did, it's like, how could you not like that?
Yeah. Well, see,
So
the 3-14 that I had the Giants at was it wasn't because I didn't think Dable would do a good job. I just didn't think that how Saquon had looked and how Daniel Jones had looked, I didn't think that you would have the turnaround with both those players that you did.
Yeah. Well, and the defense was highly suspect.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in, Don Martindale, and they beefed up that defensive line. They brought in Thibodeau. Dexter Lawrence ended up having a career year. Um, I mean, it really ended up just like everything went right for that team, which was, it started the year that way, and then it got cold in the middle of the year, and it heated up enough at the end to get them back into the playoffs. And so, really good story there. At the bottom was the Washington Commanders at 8-8-1. I had them pegged to go 8-9. You had them at 3-4, or 3-4, 3-14. And this was another team where I remember at 8-9 thinking, um, I thought they could outperform the model,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't happen. I was thinking, hey, this is going to work for Wentz because statistically, Wentz was actually pretty solid with Indianapolis, even though the record for the team didn't play out that way. But with Washington, he never even got close to matching the stats that he had at Indy. And some of that was the offensive line, some of that was just him because we saw a very clear improvement with that offensive line as the year went on, especially when Heineke got the start. They started really protecting him. Wentz came back in and was just a freaking pick machine, and so it not good for him, dude. It's going to be tough sledding from here on out for that guy. All right, going on over to the NFC North. This one, um, you know, Minnesota ended up being the top dog at 13-4, which was wild. They had something like 8 or 9 wins by one score, and like a bunch of them coming from behind, and a little bit flukish. And the model for me had them at 5-12. You also picked them at 5-12. This was one where I remember going back to one of the earlier models. I thought they had a little bit of dark horse potential because as I was tweaking my formulas, they had a ton of variation. And it was
Mm-hmm.
similar to the Lions, man. It was like you change one or two things and their record swung by like 5 wins. Um, but I ultimately opted with my final model, and rightfully so. They had a rookie head coach. Nobody could have saw them going 13-4. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they are suspect for the playoffs because of some of that. But we'll see. I mean, I like KC1. Kirk Cousins and all that jazz. Its second in the division was the Lions. They finished 9-8. My model really freaking loved the Lions. Had them at 13-4. That was a tough one. I think my two models had them on the low end at 5 wins and on the high end at 13 wins. And it was like, what the hell do you do with that?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it'd be fine if it was like plus or minus 1 or 2 games, but an 8 game swings quite a bit. James, you had him at 11-6. I'm happy as heck with the way the Lions finished. And even though my model was higher on them, 9-8 for me is a success, and it has them ahead of schedule in the rebuild from where I would have historically imagined them. And so I feel
Mm-hmm.
good about that team.
Yeah. So if I would, well, actually, I'll hit this. You finish the North, and then I'll hit my
Sure.
point.
Yeah, and so then next we got Green Bay finished third in the division at 8-9. My model had them at 14-3, and you had them at 12-5. I do remember looking back thinking, hey, even if Rodgers starts to decline a little bit, uh, whether it's because of his age or because of the lack of experience at wide receiver, I thought that two running back combo with A.J. Dillon and
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Jones was going to carry him because it did just the other year. LaFleur's first year there, they won 13 games or whatever, doing just that. Somehow this year, he couldn't get back into that rhythm, and it was a struggle largely until the end of the season, man.
Yeah. So with Green Bay, the issue with them was like they started the season trying to pass too much and not running it, and that's where they kind of hit that area where they lost a bunch of games that they should have won, and they probably would have won if they were running the ball more.
Yep. Good point. And so then at the bottom of the NFC North, we had the Chicago Bears at 3-14. You hit those guys spot on, James. That was your pick. I had them at 1-16, tied for my worst record in the league. And it was wild because through the first half of the season, I would have thought they might have been able to finish with 6 or 7 wins
Mm-hmm.
because Fields was running all over people, making some magic happen. But then, started to get banged up a little bit, and it was almost like the magic kind of wore out. And no matter what he did, they just couldn't get the win. And so, but we kind of expected them to struggle. They gutted that roster. They did him no favors, and they got an uphill battle to get back into like some kind of competitive form. They need to hit a
Mm-hmm.
home run this offseason, basically.
Yeah. So with the North, this is kind of an instance of where I tweaked it, and I tweaked from my original picks to I tweaked it a little bit. So I originally had Chicago winning 7 games, and then when I went back through it, I was like, okay, probably 3 is more accurate. I originally had Detroit at 9-8, and then went back through it, and I was like, well, I could see them winning 11. And I also had originally had Minnesota at 6-11. So I kind of with Detroit, I tweaked it too much one way. I tweaked it when I shouldn't have. Chicago, I tweaked it perfectly. So
Yeah, and it's tough. The NFC North for us as Lions fans, I think it's always going to be difficult to pick because it's
mhm.
hard to like totally eliminate our bias for the team. And so
Yeah,
that's where, I was just saying, hey, the model's high on them. I'm going with the model. I told you that I'd be freaking streaking the neighborhood if they pulled it off. But that, sometimes you got to go with the model because you know that emotionally you're going to make a clouded decision. So,
yeah.
um, all right, next up is the NFC South. And so James, Tampa Bay ended up winning it at 8-9. Didn't even get to 500 and they won it. It's another one of those kind of crap divisions. Uh, my model was high on them, had them at 14-3. You had them at 10-7. And so, you were closer, but they still, by any stretch of the, I don't know, stretch of the imagination, not the right word, but they underperformed hard this year. We can agree to that. Let's just say it that way. And then after that, it was a three-way split. You had the Saints, the Panthers, and the Falcons all at 7-10. I had New Orleans at 10-7. You had them at 11-6. So we were both higher on them than they turned out to be. Which I mean, I guess let's just stop and talk about them for a second. How much of that do you put on Dennis Allen? How much of that do you put on the quarterback situation? Because really, that was like a freaking stacked roster, man.
Hmm.
I'm thinking I put a lot of it on Dennis Allen, to be
I put
honest.
I put a lot of it on Dennis Allen. Also with playing Dalton over Winston, I put
Yep.
a lot of it there. I I originally had them at 10-7, gave them an extra win, and should have gone the other way on that. I originally had Tampa Bay at 12-5, gave the kind of gave them a couple extra losses and didn't go far enough.
Yep. I got you. All right. And so, yeah, then, the Panthers, we both had them at 3-14. They probably would have finished that way if Matt Rule stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
Wilkes came in, kind of saved the day, got him to 7. And so that's kind of a good story there. Similar to the Dable thing with the Giants. It's like, hey, you got to feel good about that. And then the Falcons, I had them at 2-15. You had them at 5-12. Um, I was dogging them hard, man. I was not digging Mariota or Ritter at quarterback. I did not think that Cordero Patterson would be able to replicate his success. It seemed kind of gimmicky to me last year. And then, we've kind of known that they've not had a pass rush on defense for, 150 years or something. And so, um, it was nice to see Arthur Smith get them to outperform what I had in the model because I do like him as a head coach, but I still think that their team, from a talent standpoint, is so far away from where they need to be that it's just going to be hard for him every year. And
Hmm.
I don't know where it's going to go for him, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think they have cap issues too. So it's not like they can go out and sign free agents.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Kyle Pitts, it's almost like, without the quarterback, it just ended up being such a waste of a draft
Hmm.
pick. And then Drake London, it's like he had good moments this year where you can see the potential there, but it's also the same kind of thing. It's like until you have the quarterback, I
Hmm.
don't know that you need to be making these picks because there's really not a guy good enough to be throwing it to him. And so it seemed like they made the luxury picks when they weren't in a position to have the luxury. So,
Exactly.
that's a bummer. But yeah, it is what it is. Uh, Down to the NFC West now, James. And so the 49ers, they rocked it out at 13-4, which just, oh my God, three different quarterbacks. Mr. Irrelevant looking
Hmm.
like a perfect fit in freaking Kyle Shanahan's offense. I had him going 14-3. You had him at 6-11, and I don't, what was the hang up? Was it Trey Lance
It
or
was it
where
was
were you
Trey
at?
Lance. Like I originally when there was some uncertainty at who was going to start quarterback, I originally had them at 10-7. I was hesitant to put them much above 10-7 because of the fact that I wasn't sure who their quarterback was going to be. And then with Trey Lance and everything I was reading about Trey Lance, is like gave me huge issues with it. So I
Yeah.
way downgraded him. If I would have known going into the season that Jimmy G was 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 going to become the starter so early in the season, I probably would have had him 11 or 12 wins
Yeah.
as opposed to 6. But I had major concerns with Trey Lance.
Oh yeah, and I mean Jimmy G's been great in the regular season, and so yeah, I totally could understand where that would have changed things, and that's the whole crystal ball thing. We don't know when these injuries are going to hit or
Hmm.
whatnot, and Trey Lance did look god awful before he got hurt, which is it's going to be interesting now to see what happens with Brock Purdy because
Yeah.
he looks like a freaking spot on fit for that offense, man.
Hmm.
All right, so then after that, the big surprise was Seattle. So they took second in that division at 9-8. My model had them at 2-15. You had them at 3-14. And I don't think anybody expected Geno Smith to be as efficient as he was. And then the running game helped big time this year. Rashad Penny played great until he got hurt. Kenneth Walker stepped up when Penny went down. We know that they got great wide receivers, but then the story that really boosted them was on defense. They had something like three rookies starting at key positions on
Hmm.
defense making an impact right out of the gate this year. And that really went a long way towards them getting above 500. And so, kind of nice to see them ahead of schedule in their rebuild. And they are just like laughing all day long about the pick that they got in return for Russell Wilson because
Hmm.
that sets them up pretty for the draft this year, man.
Yeah, so the thing with Seattle, everything I'm reading, everything I'm seeing is they had no intention for Geno Smith to be their starting quarterback this year. Every intention was for Drew Lock to be the starting quarterback this year, and then draft a quarterback next year. And it just turned out that Geno Smith or Drew Lock, like he got COVID or something, so he missed that period, and he like was missing the first game. And Geno Smith played so damn well that they're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, we got to start this guy. Maybe we have a chance to make the playoffs." Which I don't know. Time will tell if that was the right decision for them. They do still have the was it fifth pick from Denver. If you think
Yep.
about it, like Detroit was a game out of the playoffs. Seattle's in the playoffs. Both of them have top six picks this
Yep.
year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just remember all off season people saying just how horrible
Hmm.
Geno Smith and Drew Lock both looked. Uh, Drew Lock
Did you?
was just like wildly erratic, and Geno Smith was like way too conservative.
Yeah. Did you see the hype video that Seahawks after they made the playoffs that they posted on Twitter?
I saw like something about them rooting on the Lions, but I didn't
Yeah.
see.
No. So the hype video they put, it was basically it started off with like a printer for a receipt printer,
Okay.
and then all the shit people were talking about them in the off season about how terrible
Oh,
they're going to be and how this and that and how it's the worst quarterback room. It's their quarterback room is where
yeah,
hope goes to die
yeah.
and this and that and like it just goes through all of that.
Some of the
It's
things that I said on this show.
yeah, it's Robert Sala. I'm keeping receipts for everyone said blah blah blah. They actually kept the receipts and said fuck you.
Yeah, yeah. No, hey, good for them, man. Good for them. I wish the Jets would have done it, but that's okay.
Hmm.
And so then James at third in the division was the Rams. They fell from grace. We talked about that. They finished 5-12. My model had them at 11-6. You had them at 14-3. And I think the big story for them was the offensive line was
Hmm.
horrible. It never gave Stafford a chance. And I don't like defending Stafford, but they never gave the dude a chance. He was getting hit so freaking fast, it didn't
Hmm.
matter. And when your line's that bad, you can't run the ball either. And then basically it just keeps your defense on the field all day. And as the year went on, the injuries just, it was like
Hmm.
basically the finishing move. Cooper Kupp went down, Stafford went down, everybody and their mom went down, and here we are 5-12. Baker Mayfield somehow at the end gave him a little spark, but I don't know why. I mean, for me, I guess for them it's like I kind of thought about it. It's like you know you're not playing for anything at that point. And so the Baker move was kind of a luxury kind of thing and whatever, totally unneeded, unnecessary. But it's also that, you traded your first round pick and, you want to kind of try to redeem yourself maybe by winning some games so that you can be like, hey, it was a good trade. But, I don't know, dude. It's just weird how that whole thing worked out, man.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I agree with you. It's a lot of like, oh, you had the injury bug, you had all that shit go on, but it's the shocker of all shocks.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the thing is, I'll tell you this, man. So, we've seen the injury bug hit teams like San Francisco, and they find a way to fight through it. They're more resilient. It seemed like the Rams, they had that adversity and they just laid down. And like we talked about it before the trade deadline, it was like, what the hell are these guys doing not making a move for an offensive lineman? It just was like, it was so obvious to everybody in the world and they didn't address it. It's like they didn't even care, man. And whatever, it is what it is. They got their ring last year, and they just totally embarrassed themselves this year, but they don't care. And then at the bottom of the division was Arizona. They finished 4-13. I had them at 7-10. You had them at 9-8. The big story there was Kyler Murray getting hurt. They were struggling with him, but it didn't help losing him. And there were a lot of people those last couple weeks of the season that they just said Cliff Kingsbury was checked out and that they were
Hmm.
surprised that he didn't get fired before the year ended. And I read an article just this week. Some guy was saying that they had a camera on him for one of the games and they were showing the clips of him between plays and at commercial breaks. And he was just like staring into space, like not even engaged with the team or anything. And not good, but it is what it is. He's out, and life goes on, man.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention with Chicago is the thing about Chicago and having the number one pick. because they have the number one pick, that means, and basically, for the Claypool trade, they basically traded a first round pick for Claypool because Miami forfeited their first round pick this year. So there's only 31 picks in the first round. So essentially, the first pick of the second round, which is going to Pittsburgh for Claypool, is pick number 32.
Yeah, but they won't get the fifth-year option on it because it's
right.
Yeah, I got you. That's interesting though to point out.
For Claypool.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he didn't really light the world on fire for him now, did he?
He did jack shit for them. They made out with like the Roquan Smith and the Khalil Mack trades, and then they turned around and traded for Claypool, which we killed them for when they did it. Like, what the fuck are they doing? But now, seriously, look at what the fuck you did. You more or less traded a first round pick for Chase Claypool.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, Fields is a bright spot on an otherwise like just ridiculous team. And I will say this, Khalil Herbert, he stepped up big time this year.
Mm-hmm.
When he was healthy, wow, he was a good story. But man, that team and I'm okay with it because I'm a Lions fan and we got to play them. But I just don't like seeing. I like seeing teams be competitive and then just you beating them because you're the better competitor. It's like right now you can't even call them competitive, which is a bummer. All right, so that's the preseason predictions recap. Why don't we let's go down. We already went through our playoff bet details. Let's go and let's get to the fucking main attraction here, man. Let's do our Super Wild Card Weekend game picks, James. That sound good to you, man?
Sounds good to me.
Do you want to lead this off? How do you want to do this?
I say we just kind of go in order and
okay,
from Saturday to Monday night, and we'll talk about the game, who we pick, and our confidence in it.
All right, so we got Seattle at San Francisco on Saturday. Who do you like there and why, man?
So, I mean, first of all, like with this game, who would have thought Seattle would be here?
Nobody.
On top of that, who would have thought San Francisco would have been here?
The way the year started, nobody.
So my only concern, and the only reason why this isn't my highest confidence, is kind of in the middle, is I'm hesitant to be too confident in San Francisco. While I think they have a chance of winning or making it to the Super Bowl, possibly winning it this year, I'm concerned that Purdy's going to turn back into a pumpkin.
Yeah, I mean, he is Mr. Irrelevant, so you do got to be careful. I get that.
So I think San Francisco is going to beat Seattle, and I'm assigning like a middle four number confidence on it.
Okay. Yeah, and so James, I've also got San Francisco. I like the way that they've been playing with Purdy because it reminds me a lot of how Dallas was with Cooper Rush. Mm-hmm. Everybody's chipping in. McCaffrey's playing great. Kittle's playing great. The defense is playing great. And so they're not putting all the pressure on Purdy, which I think is really important. And this is like the most healthy we've seen the 49ers going into the playoffs probably since Shanahan's been there. And so, so I like that. And so I'm going with San Francisco. The last I checked, the line had San Francisco with a huge spread, 9.5 points. My model has it at 8. And I do believe, like going the other way, I think Seattle's maybe coming in, with a ton of momentum with the way their year worked out. But I think you can argue that San Francisco is probably nipping at the heels in the momentum factor because of Brock Purdy and the way that they've rallied. And so looking at the trenches on my heat map, San Francisco should dominate both ways, especially with their defensive front seven against Seattle's offensive line. I think that'll make life difficult for Geno Smith and Kenneth Walker. And then just kind of like looking back, they played just a couple weeks ago, December 15th. San Francisco won 21-13. And then just for what it's worth, I pulled some of the stats on NFL.com. San Fran right now, they've got the number 5 offense and the number 2 defense. I mean, that's your top 5 both ways. That's badass. Seattle, on the other hand, They're 12th on offense and 26 on defense. And I think it's that 26 on defenses that's going to hurt them in the playoffs.
Hmm.
The 12 on offense, maybe they'd be fine playing somebody other than the 49ers. But I think the 49ers are going to shut down that offense, and that defense not going to be able to save them.
So, so a couple other little notes about this game is and I'm going to go to the betting angle a little bit because I want to. San Francisco's favored by 9.5 points. The last 30 years, wildcard favorites at home of at least 9 points are 11-0 against the spread.
Nice.
And for Purdy, is only the second rookie quarterback to be favored by at least 7 points in the playoffs since 2000, and that was Roethlisberger in 2004, who was favored by 9, and they won at New York.
Yeah, and that was a stacked Pittsburgh team, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember those days. They were having Roethlisberger throw the ball like 15 times a game. I mean, you talk about like a perfect way to break in a quarterback. Like, hey, we're so good, you only need to do this much.
Mm-hmm. But interestingly, the last time Seattle was at least a 3-point underdog in the wildcard round was when they were a 10-point underdog to New Orleans in 2010.
Oh, was that the beast mode?
Yeah.
Where they upset them? Gotcha. Well, let's see if Kenneth Walker can go beast mode. All right, so moving on. Next one, James.
Yep.
All right, so next up we got the Los Angeles Chargers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Who do you like there and why? Oh, and by the way, mine was also a 4 confidence for that game. But yeah, moving on there. Who do you like and why?
So, all right. So first of all, this game spread-wise is a pick'em. Jacksonville, in their history, have never been in a game that closed with the spread as a pick'em.
Okay.
Ever. I kept going back and forth on this.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me to pick, man.
This is the only since 2018. This is the third home team that's an underdog since 2018, and the other 2 were in 2020.
Okay.
So I have to go with my model on this. My model has it as a 27-24 win by Jacksonville.
Okay.
And I'm not super confident in it. There's only one, but there's one game that I'm less confident in, so I'm going to assign a 2-point value to this game.
I gotcha. So for me, James, I'm going to go with the Chargers here, and I'm going to give it the 1 for my confidence. This is, my least confident game. Basically, when I was checking the line, the last I saw it had the Chargers -2. My model had the Chargers -1. I do think, however, that Jacksonville's coming in with more momentum with the way their season ended compared to the Chargers and the games in Jacksonville, which favors them. I think when I look at my heat map, it's close from top to bottom, but it gives the edge to the Chargers at quarterback with Herbert, and it gives them the edge with their secondary, which I think further, meaning that the Jaguars secondary is weak, which I think further helps Herbert if it ends up being a tight game. And when I look at their last game played, it was all the way back in September on the 24th. Jacksonville beat them down 38-10. But Peterson came out and he admitted these are 2 different teams now. And that was back when like everybody was hurt for the Chargers. Um, and they've gotten healthy, and so this should be a totally different game. Beyond that, looking at the NFL.com stats, the Chargers have the number 8 offense and the number 20 defense, whereas the Jacksonville Jaguars have the number 9 offense and the number 24 defense. They're like almost mirror images of each other statistically, like that, which is impressive. But if you dig further and look into it, the Chargers are very one-sided on offense. They're
Mm-hmm.
third in passing, but 30th in rushing. And then Jacksonville is more balanced, 10th in passing and 14th in rushing. And so that's kind of interesting. Like that to me, the more balanced approach, I like it with Jacksonville. But I do think Herbert's a rare talent, and my model's got him by 1, so I'm going with my model, man.
I don't know if we have to talk about this next game. It's Miami at Buffalo, and so there's no way in hell that Buffalo loses this game. No fucking way they lose this game. Seriously, Skylar Thompson, whatever the fuck his last name is,
Yeah.
looks like he's getting the starting nod for Miami, and Buffalo's getting Micah Hyde back. And I forget the other player they're getting back. I'm Buffalo all the way.
Jamison Crowder, I believe.
Yep, that's it. So I'm on Buffalo. I'm going to assign a 6-point value to it because seriously, there's no fucking way that Buffalo can lose this game.
Yeah, and you know what, James? I'll tell you.
about that in the news. I apologize.
Yeah, go for it.
The league announced the neutral site if Buffalo, Kansas City meet in the conference championship game this week.
Okay.
They announced it. It's going to be Atlanta.
Gotcha.
Apparently, Atlanta, and there's some other stadiums that are on the list for playoff games. They're on standby for playoff games. It happened in COVID 2020. They put I think 4 stadiums on notice that they could host a playoff game, or a playoff game could be moved there at any moment, and they chose Atlanta, which I think it should have been an outdoor game somewhere in the north, but
oh yeah, that would have made a lot of sense. Lambeau.
But apparently Atlanta is the same distance away from Kansas City as it is Buffalo.
Okay. And I mean, it's a newer stadium, so that's kind of nice. But yeah, I would have thought that would have been such a slap in the face to play it at Lambeau. All right, so for me, James, I'll run you through my notes. When I checked the line, it had Buffalo by 13. My model, surprisingly, with all the updates I could find, was only winning by 6, and I don't know why. I've gone back and I've combed it several times, and so that part of it makes me nervous because Tua's out, which gives Buffalo an insane advantage at quarterback. I will say this: it does seem like Josh Allen tried to do too much this year, and he turned the ball over a lot more than he should have. Some of them really bad turnovers in the red zone. But like, he's just so freaking good. I gotta believe he's gonna calm down and dial it in. These guys last played on December 17th. Buffalo won 32-29. But this is like, we're seeing 2 totally different teams just not even a month later. And so, looking at the NFL.com stats, Buffalo dominant, number 4 on offense, number 1 on defense. Miami, number 6 on offense and number 18 on defense. Take that number 6 on offense with a grain of salt because 2 was out and they were electric to start the year. Things cooled off for them big time. Also, Miami very one-sided. They were 4th in passing and 25th in rushing, which is even worse for them considering that 2 was out because they can't fall back on a balanced attack. Like if they were top 10 in rushing, I might say, oh, they'll just run the ball more. Buffalo, on the other hand, number 8 in passing, and number 9 in rushing. I really like that balance. I was shocked to see number 9 in rushing, but you know, Josh Allen does run the ball a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I know Singletary had moments this year, and so either way they put it together. And so yeah, I agree with you. Buffalo should shred them, and so I'm giving it my 6 for my confidence number as well here.
Next up, we have the rematch of the second most lopsided or conference championship game ever, the New York Giants at the Minnesota Vikings. So, last time these two teams played in the playoffs, I'm going to read you some stats.
Let's hear it.
Minnesota had 114 offensive yards. One receiver for the New York Giants had 155 yards and 2 touchdowns.
What year was this?
This was the 2001 playoffs. It was in 2001 on January 14th, 2001.
Okay.
Vikings at the Giants. The Giants won 41-0.
Oh man, that's such a beatdown.
They scored 34 points in the first half.
Yeah, let's put in the backups and let's get ready for next week.
Yeah. So in the 2000s, it's the tied for the most lopsided win with the New York Jets over the Peyton Manning-led Indianapolis Colts.
Okay.
In the wild card of 2003, where the Jets won 41-0.
Oh, was that a Rex Ryan team?
Yeah.
It had to be. Yeah.
I believe it was. So if you want to go to the most lopsided, it was the most lopsided conference championship game. It was the 1991 playoffs. The Buffalo Bills against the Los Angeles Raiders. Buffalo won 51-3.
That shouldn't happen in the NFL, man.
51-3. That Buffalo
Mercy
team
rule.
but that Buffalo team back then, that was the one that went to four Super Bowls in a row. I mean, they were fairly high scoring.
Yeah, and they didn't win any of them, which is so crazy. Which, I mean, I would love to see them get one because it's like they deserve it, but it's just like nothing's given in the NFL, man.
Yeah, but anyways, back to this game. These two teams played a couple of weeks ago. What was it? 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago? Minnesota won.
Yeah, they played Christmas week, man, December 23rd.
Yeah, and interesting stat about this game is the lowest point differential, or lowest combined point differential ever for two teams making a playoff or playing in the playoffs. Combined, these teams are -9.
Oh, how does that happen? How does that happen?
I don't fucking know. I thought a couple weeks ago that any team playing Minnesota in the playoffs would win, except for the New York Giants.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Vikings. My model has it at 27-21 for Minnesota, so it's a close game. But I'm going to sign it based on a couple of the other games. I'm going to sign a 3 to it.
Okay. Well, I kind of like where you're at. I've got the Vikings. When I was looking at it the other day, it said the line was at 3 for the Vikings. My model has it at 8, which seemed way too high. You're showing it at 6, and so I feel a little bit better about what my model's doing. We already covered all the tight games with Minnesota this year, and I think that the Giants are going into this way more pumped up than the Vikings are. And I'm just looking. Let's see my heat map. basically the heat map is showing quarterback and wide receiver sticking out for the Vikings. And it also has them with an edge on their defensive front seven against the Giants' offensive line. I think that the Giants actually have the better defensive line. It's just that the Minnesota offensive line is better, which can maybe neutralize them a little bit. And Cousins is used to pressure. He's the most
Mhm.
pressured quarterback in the league. And so, like battle tested in that regard. I think he can play with the pressure in his face as long as it's not a primetime game.
Yeah, which the league did them a favor and put it in the afternoon, not prime time on Sunday.
Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for pointing that out. And so, looking at the NFL.com rankings for these guys, James, the Vikings, number 7 on offense, number 31 on defense. That is brutal. And then for the Giants, 18 on offense and 25 on defense. How the Giants got in the playoffs, I mean, just beyond me. But they pulled it off, man. Just great coaching. Now, if you look at them offensively, they are totally inverted. And what I mean by that is the Vikings are number 5 in passing, number 27 in rushing, which is wild because they got Dalvin Cook, while the Giants are 26 in passing. Not really a surprise because of Daniel Jones and no names at wide receiver. But they're number 4 in rushing. And we talked a lot about them this year, about how whatever way Saquon goes, that team will go because, he started the year hot and then he got cold and the team followed that path. You know, the Giants need Saquon to play great in this game for them to have a chance. Um, Otherwise, I think Minnesota takes it. And so I'm going Minnesota, and I'm giving it a 2 for my confidence on this one, just because, I think both these teams are suspects, so I could almost flip a coin, but that's my pick, homie.
Next up, we have the Sunday night game, the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. I could just sum it up with Cincy is just better than Baltimore, period.
They're just better. That's all
But
you need to know.
but what I will say is without Lamar, Baltimore struggles. I mean, it's a struggle to see Baltimore scoring 19 points.
Yeah.
In fact, my model has them scoring 12.
Yeah, it's hard to win a playoff game with 12 points.
Yes. That's what, 4 field goals?
Correct.
Or a touchdown, a field goal, and a safety?
Yep,
Or
yep,
or
yep.
6 safeties?
6 safeties.
Cincinnati wins this game. I'm assigning it a 5. The only reason why it's not the 6 is because of the Buffalo matchup. Which that's one thing I mentioned to you, and it just occurred to me. I'm kind of disappointed that every playoff game is a rematch of a game at least one game this season.
Yeah, I know, but you can't do anything about that.
I know, it's just kind of disappointing. Like maybe you could have just given Detroit a bone and said, nope, we're gonna put, even though Seattle beat you, we're gonna put you in the playoffs so we don't have
Yeah.
all rematches.
No, this team's better. We're just trumping it. Uh, yeah, but then people would stop watching the NFL because they'd be
Yeah,
like, "What
I
is
know.
this? What the fuck's going on?" Bush League. All right, so yeah, James, you're going with the Bengals. I'm going with the Bengals. When I was looking at the line last night, it had Cincinnati by 8.5. My model had Cincy at 6. And so with Lamar being out, Cincy has a major advantage at quarterback. The one thing that concerns me, probably why my model doesn't have a bigger spread, is that Cincinnati has issues on the offensive line, and Baltimore's defensive front seven has a significant matchup advantage. And they've been good at getting pressure on Burrow. The problem is if they can't score, it doesn't matter. Eventually, Burrow will find a way to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
We just saw it this past week. Cincinnati won 27-16. Beyond that, looking at the NFL.com stats, Cincy, I was surprised. They're only number 15 on offense. They're number 7 on defense, which is very respectable. Baltimore, number 16 on offense, number 10 on defense, but you can't trust their offensive ranking because Lamar's out. Both teams very one-sided on offense. Similar to the last game we talked about, it's inverted. Baltimore's number 2 in rushing, number 28 in passing. I didn't expect that. Cincinnati, number 7 in passing, and number 29 in rushing. And that's with Joe Mixon. Like some of these stats confused me. And I've always known Baltimore was a heavy rushing team, but I thought earlier in the year it just seemed like Lamar was passing a lot more. And so to see him that high on rushing was a shock. Cincinnati, I don't know. I guess I thought Mixon was doing more on the ground. And I knew that it was kind of a quiet year for him, but I thought he was still getting production. So to be 29th in rushing was a little bit of a shock. But either way, that's okay. Joe Burrow's been good with pressure to some degree, just like Cousins has been. He's quick at getting the ball out of his hand, and eventually the Bengals will find a way to score. I don't have that same kind of confidence in the Ravens, and so I'm giving it my number 5 confidence factor for this game.
All right, now we have the Monday night game, which is the Dallas Cowboys at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes.
I know you know my pick, and you probably saw my pick and said, "So what the fuck are you thinking?"
Not really, but
So by default, this is my least confident pick. First, Tom Brady is 7-0 against Dallas.
but never in the playoffs.
Never in the playoffs. I understand that. Dak Prescott has thrown 11 interceptions in the past 7 games.
Yeah, not good.
Let me see what else. Over the past 3 weeks, they've run the ball 90 times for 266 yards only.
Okay.
So, like,
Yeah, not
3
even
yards
3
a
a
carry.
carry.
Just under 3 yards a carry. They have, over that span, Dallas has the league low 1 yard after first contact. And rushing yards over expected, minus 83.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it fell apart for him on offense, man.
So basically, the Cowboys are a CeeDee Lamb or bust offense.
Okay.
Nobody does anything else but that. Brady has also unlocked that Mike Evans connection since in Week 17, and
Yeah, he blew up in that game.
Yeah, and the deep ball, which Brady showed in Week 17 that he can still throw to Mike Evans, is where Dan Quinn's defense stumbles.
Okay.
And I think that's about it. I modeled it out. I have Tampa Bay winning by 3.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so you said you gave it your lowest confidence. You gave it a 1.
I gave it a 1.
So I got Dallas as my winner for this game. I'm giving it my confidence factor of 3. When I was looking at the line, it showed Dallas minus 2.5. Almost lined up perfectly with my model, which has Dallas by 3. As we've seen teams pretty much all year, the Dallas defensive front 7 should beat the Tampa Bay offensive line and put pressure on Brady. And I mean, you did talk about Micah Parsons kind of disappearing down the stretch. So that's one thing to just kind of hang out there as a caveat. Aside from that mismatch on my heat map, though, these guys are pretty close top to bottom. My one concern with Dallas is that Dak, like we talked about, led the league in picks. and that was with a few missed games, which it just makes it even worse. It seems like he's trying to do too much, and they're not playing very good complementary football. Uh, so even though I gave it a 3, I am very nervous about this game. I just don't trust Tampa Bay's offense because we've only seen them really have a couple of good offensive performances throughout the whole year. And I know that they just had one a couple weeks ago, but it just makes it a hesitancy for me. And these guys did play all the way back in week 1. Tampa Bay won 19-3, which was really one of their better looking games. Um, aside from all that, the NFL.com stats are actually pretty even for these guys. It's got Dallas as the number 10 offense, number 13 defense, Tampa Bay, the number 14 offense, and the number 11 defense. That's like about as even as you can get a matchup. And then offensively, digging deeper on these guys, Dallas is a little more balanced. The number 14 passing attack, number 8 rushing attack. Tampa Bay is very one-sided like we've seen some of these other teams. They're number 2 in passing and number 32 in rushing. How the hell they're number 2 in passing? That blows my mind. But the lack of a good rushing game makes me nervous. And I thought, Fournette, I want to say is playing. It's just I don't know what all's going on there, but yeah, I don't know. So I can't count on Tampa Bay's offense, and I know that Dallas's offense can be electric at times. They've not been as consistent as in past years. And so just kind of looking at everything that I look at that way, I'm going Dallas. But I think you've painted an inspiring picture as to why Tampa Bay could win this game, James.
And the other thing about it is I completely forgot is Fournette is playing, but Jensen's back on that offensive line too.
Okay, yeah, that helps. Yeah, and I may not have put that in my model. I had a note that he was out until the end of the year, but I don't think I caught that. That's okay. It wouldn't change enough to swing it for me. So, all right, cool. Well, hey, those are the picks for this weekend, man. You good there?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go to our question of the week then. And James, you can punch me in the the next time you see me just for bringing this up. But, on the heels of Green Bay being eliminated from the playoffs and watching Aaron Rodgers mope around walking off the field with Randall Cobb, blah, blah, blah. All the rumors are swirling about whether or not he's going to return for his 19th NFL season. And he's already made comments about needing to take time to figure things out and all this crap. It's like we got Brett Favre all over again in Green Bay. Every year I'm going to think about retiring and maybe do it, but I'll come back, don't worry. And so my question of the week is, like I said, will he come back for his 19th season? My opinion is that he will be back. Um, you know, I think because he's played this game the last couple of years, I'm starting to get used to it. And I think some of these veteran guys like to do this because it gets them out of some of that off-season work. But also, it puts pressure on the team to try to appease him and draw him to coming back. And so, like, if he wants to get more wide receivers or an offensive lineman or whatever, it maybe gives him a little bit of leverage to play that game with the front office. Um, but, like my problem with him is that he makes these comments that the team is at least a couple players away from being contenders. He blames everybody but himself for their losses. He's got no personal accountability. And so, I don't know, maybe his bitterness, he could finally walk away. But I think at the end of the day, just being real, the dude is going to be owed 60 million guaranteed if he comes back. That's way too much money for him to walk away from. Plus, their young wide receivers made tremendous improvement over the course of the year, as did some of their younger defenders. Even Quay Walker, he had that bad personal foul in that game against the Lions, but he really came on down the stretch, man. And so I think that, he's going to play the back and forth all off season like he likes to do. Then he's going to go on one of his ayahuasca trips and find Jesus again, however it worked out last year, and he'll recommit. But it's garbage. It's in the same vein as the Sean McVay and the Stafford and all these guys. It's like, dude, Make up your freaking mind. This is unnecessary drama. This is the stuff I don't like hearing, but it's out there. And so, what do you think, man?
So I don't know.
You don't know.
And you mentioned the 60 million guaranteed. The 60 million is already guaranteed
Whether he
because
stays or
whether he
goes.
whether he plays or not,
Oh, well then shit,
declining either of the 22. Okay, so here's his current contract. He signed 101 million dollar guaranteed. 101 million dollars guaranteed at signing. 2022 salary, 2022 roster bonus, 2023 salary, and 2023 option bonus. So his base salary in 2023 is like it's measly $1 million. His option, so the option bonus for 2023 is 58.3 million, and the option has to be exercised between March 17th, 2023 and week 1.
Okay.
Declining the 2023 option converts the base salary for that year into the bonus figure of $58.3 million. So either way, he's getting $60 million next year.
He'll be the richest man to not work if he retires, is what you're telling me.
Yes.
60 million to stay home and play.
60 million to stay home and play.
Well, that's one hell of an ayahuasca trip.
The problem with not exercising the option for Green Bay. Dead cap hit.
Oh, yeah, they're effed on the dead cap hit, yeah.
99 million, almost 100 million, just $200,000 short of 100 million.
Yeah.
That's like, I believe that's like about half the projected cap.
Yeah, and you know what? F. Rogers for making his comment about being a number of players away. Well, hey, when you soak up all your cap space, you don't exactly give the team options.
Mm-hmm. So right now, the projected cap for next year is, already without cutting Rogers, they're already 14 million over the cap.
Yeah, they're screwed, man. They're in trouble. But we're in that fake cap era, so they'll find a way to manipulate it.
They'll find a way to manipulate it, add some void years and some shit. So in 2023, they only have a measly $500,000 of dead cap, so it's not too bad.
All right, so flip a coin, man. Pick a side.
I think Rodgers comes back, and this is what I think happens. Rodgers comes back. Green Bay tells Rodgers going in, you know what? This is your last year. After this year, we're done with you. We're moving on. Green Bay still has to decide on Jordan Love because they're going to have to exercise their option. So
Rodgers lights it up. They fucking trade him.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Love's the future.
Exactly. But here's the problem: if he comes back, if he gets hurt, the rest of his contract guarantees.
Yeah.
Or the majority of the rest of his contract. The other option, the 40 million option for 24, 30 million or 47 million. 47 million is the option for 24. That guarantees, that's injury guaranteed.
Yeah, I just had this random thought of, it's like where there's a will, there's a way. Could the fucking Giants find a way? I mean, not the Giants, sorry, not the Jets find a way to bring him in, and their owner making that comment about, they'd pay whatever, and maybe that's part of why they let LaFleur leave, or booted him, was they could be like, hey, pick your fucking offensive coordinator and you can come here and do whatever the hell you want, buddy. But it's just so much money, and I know the Jets aren't even in great cap situation anyhow. So it's like, I don't know. Like it just seems like he's gonna have to come back. Um, and I don't see him walking away. I just can't see that happening yet.
They could. There's some savings they could have on their cap. There's a number of players that they could cut that would save them millions of dollars for the Jets. Plus, it's a fake cap. Trade them. Give like give them like 10 void years and
Yeah, basically you're loading it up for 1 year to make a run, and
yeah,
then you deal with the consequences next year.
yeah, exactly. But I think Rodgers comes back. I think really it was his last home game in Lambeau, because of the simple fact that how he was acting after the game. It
Yeah.
was like he was soaking it in,
Yeah, he
and
did go off very slow. He kept
mhm.
looking around. Yep.
And I think I told you, Jameson Williams asked him something about a jersey. He said, "No, I
Oh
think I
yeah.
have, I think I have to keep hold on to this one."
Yeah, that's true. Yep, but that could also be Rodgers playing his game
It
because,
could be. It could be.
he's very good at like planting those seeds to give
Yeah.
the full illusion.
True.
So,
True. I don't know. I think he'll come back, but he'll play for another team next year.
I got you. Well, that'd be interesting. All right. Well, hey, that's the question of the week. So anybody who's watching, just like name that stadium, hit us up, man. Answer our question of the week. If you do, shit, we'll even give you a super special shout out for that, and I'll bookmark it like name that stadium. Otherwise, that's all I got, James. You got any closing thoughts, man?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, hey, like always, dude, it was fun. Anybody who's still watching, we hope you like the show. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, throw us a like, all that kind of jazz. And it's going to be some good football this weekend. James, I hope you have a good night, buddy.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut, hut, hike.